It has come to my attention that a lot of parents are watching these videos with their kids at home. Please know that this video was intended for a high school audience. Not everything I say is necessarily appropriate for children.
Whoa!
This is my cat. This is Kenobi. Kenobi's not really my cat. Just kind of showed up at my house one day. When you live in the country outside of a small town like Rocky Mountain House, I think that when people decide they don't want a cat anymore, they just go drop it off out in the country and hope someone will take care of it. And we do, right? Because it might catch our mice. So we put out some food on the deck and just a little bit every couple days. And we, if we're having tuna, we might pour the oil out into the little cat dish so that Kenobi can have some food. And this is my kid, Leo. Well, he's not really my kid. He just showed up here one day. I don't know if maybe someone from town just came and dropped him off here because, they didn't want him running around town or what it was. But we take care of him. We put some food out on the deck for him. And sometimes when we have tuna, we crack open the can and pour out the oil in his little dish so that Leo can have something to eat. And we cut a hole in a Rubbermaid container and put some mats in it so he can sleep there because, it seems like the right thing to do. And that's where Leo came from. Okay. So what's the difference between a cat and a baby? If you don't know, I'm not going to let you babysit my kids. For some reason, we all value children more than we value animals, right? If someone saw that some rare animal, some snow leopard or something like that was about to attack a child they didn't know, and they had a gun, they'd probably shoot the snow leopard, even though it's a rare animal, right? If we value them equally, well, let's just let the animal eat the child and be like, look, now you're fed. Oh, good, we did a good deed for snow leopards. But we don't have that attitude. And to our culture, to the world that just thinks humans evolved by accident from bonobos or chimpanzees or a common ancestor with those ones, okay? To the world, they would just say, well, we value humans because we are human and we prefer our own kind. To the Catholic, there's more to it than that. First of all, we can believe in evolution, okay, that our bodies evolved over millions of years. That is an acceptable belief. But what we have to believe is that at some point, if our bodies evolved, God created us uniquely by instilling in us an immortal spirit that makes us, an immortal soul, that makes us in the image and likeness of God. All those things that are unique about humans from other animals, right? Our creativity, our ability to imagine the future, our ability to love, our ability to override our instincts. All of these things that are unique to humans, those are the things that make us created in the image and likeness of God. There was this old movie called Noah. It's not that old. It was made in 2014, starred Russell Crowe. And they did this really cool thing in that movie where they showed you how our bodies may have evolved, but at the same time, you've got Noah narrating the creation like it's portrayed in Genesis 1. Noah is on the ark and he's explaining to his kids the creation narrative. And he tells it in a very similar way to what Genesis 1 says the creation narrative was. In the beginning, there was darkness, and then God said, let there be light, and there was light. But what you see in the background when you watch this video clip is scientifically what happened. So when God says, let there be light, what you see is the Big Bang, a depiction of the Big Bang. And then it says, and God said, let there be stars, let there be sun, and you see these things starting to form. You see a meteor crash into the earth, and that causes the moon to be formed. And then it says, and God created all the living plants, and you see these plants sprouting up on the earth, and every living organism. And you see starting off with microorganisms, which of course Noah would have no idea even existed. He starts with microorganisms, and then these things, you see them evolving over millions of years, and they turn into like worms, and then eels, and then fish. And then it says, and God created every land animal. So you see the fish crawling out of the sea and becoming like an amphibian, and then a lizard, and then a rodent, and the rodents start climbing trees, and then they're primates. And so it kind of goes through this whole evolution process, and then it says, and then God created man in his own image and likeness. And what happens is you see this like lemur or something swinging through the trees, and then there's a flash of light, and all of a sudden you see the humans. And you don't see the lemur turning into the humans. And I think that that was a fascinating choice that movie made. So among all the created things, humans are unique. Humans were created in God's image and likeness. And notice that we're the last things that were created in that creation narrative, right? We're the last things that were created. And when God created everything, everything he made, he makes the sun, he makes constellations, he makes stars, he says, it is good. He makes orcas and elephants, and he says, it is good. He makes humans, and he says, it is very good. See, we're the ones who are created in God's image and likeness. In a certain sense, we are God's representatives on earth. This is why we were given stewardship of the earth. This is why we have to take care of our environment. When you see things like climate change or pollution or smog or all these ways, where humans are taking advantage of the earth or even taking advantage of animals, right? Some of the farming practices where if people are trying to farm chickens and they're just keeping them in too small a cages and cutting their beaks off so they can't peck at each other and stuff. We're not being good stewards of the creation that God has given us. The fact that the creation is under us, it doesn't mean that it's ours to do what we want with, right? It means it's ours to take care of. And yes, God lets us enjoy the fruits of it. God lets us have meat and stuff like that. But as humans, we are at the pinnacle of creation. And that's why we have this immense, immense value. To the Catholic understanding, every human is equally valuable, no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're black or white or rich or poor or weak or strong or where you live. It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how old you are. We're all equally valuable. Now that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, who's going to argue with that? Everybody agrees. All humans, they're all equally valuable. Let's fight for equal human rights. But hold the phone. There are certain areas in our culture where they don't necessarily see that, right? Once you start applying it, then you have to ask the question, what about babies that aren't born? See, in our culture here in Canada, we allow abortion for any reason, right? Some woman could have an abortion and she might have a really good reason to have an abortion. All right, I'm not judging the women who've went out and had abortions because they're informed by our culture, and our culture doesn't understand the inherent value of human life. So she might have a really good reason. Maybe she can't afford to support the child. Maybe she's actually been sexually abused by someone and it would be traumatic. Who knows what the situation is? But in Canada, you could get an abortion for any reason. You could get an abortion because you're pregnant with a girl and you wanted to have a boy. Or you could have an abortion because your kid's going to have Down syndrome. To the Catholic, it doesn't matter what the reason is, because all human life is sacred. And so that's why we take the stand that we do on abortion. That's why we take the stand that we do on euthanasia, right? A lot of people think, oh, well, the value of human life, it's rooted in your ability to achieve. It's rooted in your ability to think and these kinds of things, your talents, your ambitions, right? So if someone is old and they're hurting and they can't achieve anymore and they maybe aren't able to think as clearly as they were before, or their value of life has gone down, because the other thing that a lot of people say in the world, they think that the point of life is simply to enjoy life. Right? It doesn't mean they're hedonistic and they're selfish, right? But their moral stance is this: I am going to enjoy my life as much as possible without inhibiting the joy of others. And I may, in fact, be generous and give joy to others in their lives, but that's where the meaning of life comes from. To the Catholic, the meaning of our life comes from God, and the fact that we were created in God's image and likeness, and in the fact that we are capable of love. So it changes everything. The value of the unborn child, the value of the suffering person. That person is still presumably capable of love. And even if they're not, if they're in a vegetative state and you say, oh, that person can't love, they are still someone that we can love. Their life is inherently valuable because of who they are. This is something that's very important for us as Christians. We need to recognize the dignity of humanity as created in God's image and likeness, and we need to become aware of the dignity that we ourselves have as created in God's image and likeness. I am a son of God. That's who I am. So if I'm sinning against sexuality, if I'm looking at pornography, I'm sinning against the dignity of the ladies that I'm looking at, and I'm sinning against my own dignity, right? That goes below me. That's below my dignity. And that's why all these things are considered sins. You need to know who you are. You're the pinnacle of creation. God created everything else, and then God created humans uniquely.